Last week, you had names like Drake London and Brock Bowers, the rookie Colson Loveland, Joe Flacco, the old man, and Rico Dowdle, the GOAT. They dominated in fantasy football, and they helped you win your matchup. In today's video, I'm going to talk about 10 players that should do the same in week number 10. So you're going to be ready to go, whether it's a DFS or your home league. You're going to be dominating this week. First player, and let's get the most obvious one just out of the way. You're going to hear this a lot this week, but James Cook. I mean, all right, you're right. I get it. I'm cheating. It's the Miami Dolphins, but James Cook, there's every reason for him to be the RB1 this week. I mean, if Jonathan Taylor and CMC didn't exist, right? I mean, he has every opportunity to put up a 30 bomb. If you're facing him, good luck. It's potentially not going to look pretty. Miami, the 8th best matchup for your running back, but this year they're giving up almost 150 rushing yards per game. That's third most. Total yards per game, they're top 10. And if you look at points allowed, they're top 7 as well. Ramondre Stevenson had 21 points against this Miami Dolphins team. The James Cooks of the world had 21. Breece Hall had 16. Rico Dowdle with 32. Kamani Vidal had 23. Looked like a starting running back in the NFL, even though he's a true backup. This matchup, when you look at it, the Bills actually have the highest implied team point total of the week. Currently, Vegas projects them to have 30 total points, which I haven't seen that number this entire year, to be honest with you guys. You look at the total as well, 49.5 points on FanDuel, and then a 9.5 point spread in favor of the Bills. They should be up in this game, not needing to throw the ball for the majority of the second half. I'd be shocked if any receiver is great for Buffalo in this game. And James Cook's been one of the best picks in fantasy football this year, right? Everyone's talking about regression this year. And on this channel, at least, we were like, go get James Cook. He's had an incredible season, has been so good. The Bills are 6-0, by the way, when James Cook rushes for over 100 yards. They're 0-2 when he doesn't. I'm sure they know that in the building. James Cook, by the way, is second in the league in rushing yards, just behind Jonathan Taylor. But guess what? Jonathan Taylor's played one more game than James Cook. So by the time the buys all are accounted for, James Cook could be leading the NFL in rushing yardage. So he's set to absolutely smash. There's no reason why he shouldn't be in your lineup. Here's what I'll say. I know he's dealing with an injury. If he doesn't play, I would be starting Ray Davis of the two options, but they're both fine plays because they're both going to get work against Miami. I'm projecting at least 125 plus all-purpose yards and a top 5 finish. All right, that takes me to my spicy, hot, bold take of the week. All right, you ready for this? In week 10, David Montgomery runs all over my Commanders, who are depleted. That defense is terrible, and it somehow got worse from all the injuries last week. He's going to put up 100 plus all-purpose yards and a touchdown. Put it on the board. David Montgomery's going to dominate. Commanders are technically middle of the pack as a matchup. However, this year, they've given up the fifth most total yards per game, and they're top 10 in points allowed to opposing offenses. We all saw how the Commanders got absolutely embarrassed at home last Sunday night. I don't expect that to be any different. I expect a huge game for these running backs in Detroit. Well, the Commanders' defense versus running backs this year, DeAndre Swift had 25 points, and they gave up over 7.5 yards per carry to him. Javonte Williams had over 6 yards per carry in an 18-point game. Kareem Hunt got into the end zone twice. You look at this matchup for the Lions. They had the second highest implied team point total, almost 29 points of total points expected from Vegas at least. It's a high over-under, but a very large spread, one of the largest spreads of the week in favor of the Lions, 8.5 points. We should see David Montgomery get well over 15 touches in this game. I'm projecting 15 touches, 100 plus yards. I know that sounds crazy, like we said earlier, and a touchdown. All right. Okay, let's go on to Jaylen Waddle versus the Bills. I'm a big fan of this matchup for him. Buffalo is a middle of the pack matchup against wide receivers. We've seen plenty of guys have great days. I mean, Stephon Diggs had his revenge game, over 24 points. Drake London had 158 yards. All that pretty much happened in one half, if you remember, over 31 points. Tetairoa McMillan had his highest receiving total game this year, 99 yards against this team. Rashee Rice got into the end zone against them last week. Obviously, that was on the ground because they're starting to use him in the Wildcat. But you go and you look at this game. The Bills, like we mentioned, have the highest implied team point total. If we look at the over under, it's 49.5 points. The Bills are favored by 9.5 points, like we said earlier, meaning I'm looking at this game and asking myself, how the hell are the Dolphins not throwing the entire time? Like, it's just, there's no way they aren't throwing this entire game throughout the entire second half as well. Even first half, second half, Jaylen Waddle should be dominant. It's funny because Waddle was in these trade conversations to maybe be a Buffalo Bill, but the Dolphins said no, he's an important part of what we're doing moving forward. And I agree with them. I'm projecting 6 catches and 100+ yards for Jaylen Waddle. He should be a great play this week. Okay, fourth player, we're going to start with a ton of confidence here. It's a quarterback. That is Mr. Jackson Dart. He goes up against the Chicago Bears this week. Bears are the 4th best matchup for your fantasy quarterbacks. They are 8th in passing yards allowed, the 8th most, and they're top 8 in all these categories. Total yards allowed, total points given up per game. You know, if we look at the live, team point totals, you'll see the Bears are at about 21.5 points, but Vegas doesn't really account for how good Jackson Dart is. I know that sounds crazy, right? You guys might be like, you think Jackson Dart's a superstar? I think he is. 47.5 points. The Bears are favored. It all makes sense. It's in Chicago. But what if I told you Jackson Dart is quarterback 3 in total points since becoming a starter in week number 4? What if I told you Jackson Dart in 2025 amongst qualified quarterbacks on third down, he's 3rd in EPA per play, 4th in success rate. First half of games, he's 3rd in EPA per play, 4th in success rate. Completely money on third downs. What if I told you he has the highest big time throw percentage under pressure at 11.3%? That's why you're seeing a lot of these big time plays from this Giants offense. That's what's changed from last year to this year, while also having the 7th lowest turnover worthy play percentage. He's been absolutely fantastic. So I think we're looking at a game here where the Bears are going to be up, and Jackson Dart is always good for a rushing touchdown. He has like 3 or 4 games in a row where he's had a rushing touchdown. It's completely killed the Giants running backs. I'm projecting 250 plus all-purpose yards and 2 touchdowns at least for Jackson Dart. So one of the best features on the Flock site, which is completely free, is the My Teams feature. You can access that when you use my promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, and you create a free account on the site. Go check it out. It shows expert consensus rankings, latest trades, a lot of really helpful features that you don't even have to spend a dime on. Check that out with the pinned comment. Okay, staying in the same matchup, but looking at the opposite side of the ball here, we are going to go with DeAndre Swift versus the Giants. He is practicing, so I do project him to be out there. Of course, if it's not him, Mononga is a play. But my RB15 this week, the Giants are the 2nd best matchup for your fantasy running back. This year, they're giving up the 2nd most rushing yards per game at 150. They're allowing the highest yards per carry to opposing offenses, 5.5 yards. Guys, on average, when another team ran the ball against the Giants, they're averaging 5.5 yards. They're giving up the 4th most yards per game. Bill Krosky-Merritt, he made us think he was a superstar in week 1 against this team. Javonte Williams had 25 points. Omarion Hampton averaged almost 11 yards per carry. You look at the team implied point total, they're right there near the top with the Broncos, the Ravens, the Seahawks. They are projected for 25, almost 26 implied team points, which is a fantastic number. Like we said earlier, high over under 47.5 points, and the Bears are favored. So that's obviously going to be great for the Bears in the second half. I mean, yes, Kamanangai was fantastic last week, but Ian Harditz notes on Twitter, which I think is very fair. If you look at fantasy points per game, and this is since after the bye week for DeAndre Swift, he would have been 8th on a points per game basis, right there with Bijan and James Cook and Achane, etc. He's been absolutely fantastic. Now, of course, if Monongai comes in and he's the starter for whatever reason, he's been so good as well. 176 rushing yards last week against the Bengals. It is the Bengals, to be fair. But, I mean, Kyle Monongai has already got the confidence if Swift were to miss time from Ben Johnson. He said, he's hard to bring down. He was the bell cow for Rutgers and proved that he can carry that load for us if called upon. That's straight from the horse's mouth there with Mr. Ben Johnson. Okay, let's go on to Quinshon Judkins. He's going to play the Jets this week, so we're going to start him with some confidence. The Jets are another middle-of-the-pack matchup here. The Jets are allowing the 7th most rushing yards per game, 135.8. Total points allowed, 27.6, which is 6th highest in the league. And this last week, even though they already were top 7 in both of those categories, they sent away their 2 best defensive players. Yes, you probably know. They sent away Sauce Gardner to the Colts for 2 first-round picks, which can't really blame the Jets for doing that, but their defense is going to be worse, all right? Sauce Gardner said it's been real. He's out. And they also sent away one of their best defensive linemen. Their best defensive lineman, no doubt about it. Quentin Williams. He goes to the Cowboys. Quentin Williams has been an absolute monster, and they will not have him anymore. Quentin Williams has beaten 57 double teams to generate pressure since 2022. That's the most of any player in that span. And now those 2 players who were constantly making an impact for that Jets team, they will no longer be on the field. So you look at this game, and yes, neither team is projected to score a ton of points, right? Both the Browns and the Jets, when you look at implied team point total, they're both at the bottom of the league this week for projections. But still, the Browns are projected to score more, which makes a lot of sense. In fact, after this trade went down, we did see the spread swap in favor of the Browns, 2.5 points. The Browns are 2.5 point favorites, and they're on the road, guys. That's how serious those trades were and how negative they will probably be. I'm projecting a top 10 finish for Quinshon Judkins this week, so let's get all aboard. Okay, 7th player we're going to start with a ton of confidence, Oronde Gadsden. You were probably already going to start him. He's going to be in my flex this week. That's how bad my fantasy team is in the Flock League. But the Steelers are currently the 3rd best matchup for your tight ends. They're giving up the most passing yards per game and the 3rd most total yards per game. They've been better recently, but still, through the air, they are a liability. Hunter Henry had 29 points against this defense with 2 touchdowns. Harold Fannin had 15. Tucker Kraft, may he rest in peace, his soul, 33 points. That was a week before he went down with that injury, but 143 receiving yards. He was absolutely fantastic against this defense. You look at the Chargers this week, projected for about 25 total points. That's right up there with the Bucs, Seahawks, the Bears, Ravens, the Broncos. They're right up there with all of those names this week, which makes a lot of sense. That offense has been firing on all cylinders. Oronde Gadsden, by the way, has the most receiving yards in the NFL history by a rookie tight end over a 4-game stretch. He's also the first rookie tight end ever to have 4 straight games of 65 plus receiving yards. In fact, only 22 tight ends in the century have done that. Shout out to Dynasty Zoltan on Twitter for collecting that information. Gadsden also has the highest receiving grade amongst rookie tight ends through 9 weeks. He's been absolutely fantastic. In the last 4 weeks, you're looking at no game under 65 yards, plenty of games with upside, plenty of games in the end zone, 24 catches on 27 targets, reliable, effective, efficient, and there's no reason to believe that that's going to stop this week. All right, let's jump into Devonta Smith versus the Packers. Packers are a middle-of-the-pack matchup against wide receivers. In fact, they're actually giving the 9th fewest passing yards per game and the 5th fewest rushing yards per game. So it's hard to pass. It's hard to run. There's not really a great way to attack this defense. The total is nothing to write home about, 44.5 points. The Eagles are not favorites or anything. But Devonta Smith has been great this year. I mean, he's actually right up there in receiving yardage. You'll see right ahead of Drake London, Jaylen Waddle, not far back behind the Jeffersons and the Monroe St. Browns. He's been on another level this year, which has been fantastic. I'm projecting 6 catches and 80 plus yards for Devonta Smith. Look, if some of your fantasy football teams are just completely destroyed by injuries this year, then what I've found to be helpful is to play some DFS contests. And week 8, I actually won the DFS contest on FastDraft, the Quick 6 Super Slam. Now you can create your own lineup. It's fairly simple. All you got to do is download the FastDraft app, use my promo code LAND. I'll match your deposit up to $50. And then you're going to get my week 10 rankings completely free. See if you can beat me in one of these contests, all right? Make your lineup unique. That's the key there, but you can check that out in the pinned comment if you want to have some fun. Okay, the last duo that I want you to go out there and start with some confidence this week, that is Aaron Jones and Jordan Addison versus the Baltimore Ravens. Now, here's what I will say. It is true that the Ravens defense has gotten much better in the last month. That is true. They still have their holes. They still have, don't look at what they did last week versus Miami and say, okay, that's what this defense is now. No, they still have their own issues. Baltimore is currently schedule adjusted. Okay, this is adjusted for schedule. 5th and 6th best matchups for your running backs and your wide receivers. They are top 12 in rushing yards, passing yards, and total points allowed per game. James Cook went off. David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, they all had fantastic games against this defense. Keon Coleman was relevant for a week. Amon-Ra Worthy was great. Rome Odunze was fantastic. That was a week before he dropped that goose egg. He's been really good. For Aaron Jones, he's already said that he's going to play. I know he's not practicing, but he said he's going to play. I'm relying on that. We'll have to wait and see if that's actually true. That's what was reported all last week, though. If you look at the total for the Vikings this week, 22.5 points, so projected for over 3 touchdowns. Should be a very competitive game for both of these teams. You know, with Aaron Jones and Jordan Addison, they should both be needed in this game. I'm projecting a top 15 finish for Aaron Jones and a top 20 finish for Jordan Addison. So put it on the board. These are the guys we're trusting this week. I appreciate you guys watching the video. Do me a favor, hit the like button to show some love, subscribe if you like the content, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Love. Draft with me every night this week on the FastDraft app, where there are thousands of dollars to be won weekly. Getting started is easy. Download the FastDraft app, use the promo code LAND at signup to get your deposit match up to $50. That's up to 10 free entries on us. And when you finish your first DFS contest, I'll send you my weekly rankings completely free. Check out the link in the pinned comment to start drafting today.